Do you like to play God? Of course you do. That's why you're a dungeon master. That's why you play D&D, so you can play with the lives of your players. And one of the reasons why you like that is because you like world building. You're in luck because today that's what we're talking about. This is how to be a better DM. And I am one of your co-hosts today, Justin Lewis, here joined with Caden Otley. Go ahead and say hi, Caden.
What's up?
And this show is designed to help you, the listener, become the very best dungeon master the world has ever seen, because statistically, one of you guys have to be it. And hopefully it's you. And today we are joined by some very special guests. We have Matt Thompson and Bryce Cooper from Worldsmith to talk with us about a couple things, not the least of which is Worldsmith. So Bryce, Matt, go ahead and say hello.
Hey guys.
Hey. Thanks for having us.
And
Absolutely.
Happy to be here.
It's very nice to have you guys here and put faces to the names. We've been kind of texting a little bit over the last little bit. But enough pleasantries. Let's dive right on in. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start with a few warm-up questions, and then we're going to circle back and kind of get to the meat and potatoes of how Worldsmith came about and what it is. So first question, what is your favorite homebrew creation that you've made or seen? With this question goes to Bryce, Matt, and Caden if you're up for it.
Cool. I could start off. I have a pretty fun one from just our session last week, actually. So this was actually made on our website, but I'm a big tennis player, grew up playing tennis a lot. And we recently had a session where almost all of us were just getting constantly bombarded with spells. And we have one guy who has counterspell, but is really cautious with it. And never casts it. So we were just getting wrecked from a distance. And our DM was kind enough to make a counterspell tennis racket kind of a thing.
Nice.
So it's like a tennis racket, but it has a blade on the edge. So it can double as a melee weapon, but you can use your spell slot and cast counterspell through it. And when you do so, it reflects the spell back at the caster. And
I love that.
It was a really, really fun way to make a kind of zany weapon that encouraged him to be a little bit more gracious with his counterspell.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I am still trying to think of one, but I don't know if I have an exact. Yeah, I don't know if I have one. But...
No worries. Caden, do you have one that you might want to share?
So I've really only homebrewed my most recent campaign. That was like, the world I kind of dumped everything into. And my favorite part about that is I have this cult that wears purple robes, and they are kind of terrorists. Justin's like intimately familiar with them at this point, and
unfortunately
they have gemstones that they wear on their head that are fueled by the essence of a deity, and they can basically like draw upon those to cast like mostly mental effects. So like they can put people to sleep or different things, and they use it to control the population. So
that's pretty awesome.
Cool. That's awesome.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it's awesome in theory. No, it was really cool. It's a very cool concept. I think the thing that I like the most, and this is going to sound so stupid, but I really like the name of those gemstones, acrylamine. Because it sounds like any other gemstone. It sounds like it could exist. So very well done on the name. Okay,
thanks.
Next up, favorite piece of world building that I've either made or a dungeon master has made that you've kind of participated with.
I've got one. Yeah. This campaign that I've been running with some of my friends and cousins, the DM actually put together like a life inside of a dream. So we basically are, campaigning, following a storyline, while we're also like having dreams about things all the time. So like we're jumping back and forth. So it's keeping us on our toes while we're expecting something might happen in our dream that might relate or tie into it, but they're completely separated as like for the most part. So it's pretty interesting to see that.
Wow. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, my problem is I'm like there are so many things that I've kind of run into. I was thinking about like our campaign, Justin, with you, and there are so many like different pieces that I liked from it. I was trying to think of like my most enjoyable experiences, and then I don't like the hard part is like I don't know which are homebrew and which aren't.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I guess I don't really have like a great answer for that.
Yeah, no worries. I think that's the idea behind like nice world building is I mean, even if you're playing a module, you can't tell if it's part of the module or if it's just
Yeah.
the DM, and that's what we all hope for. Matt, did you think of one that you want to come back to?
Yeah, so I have one. It was really fun, and this is kind of a classic trope that everybody talks about doing, but we started one campaign with like the classic amnesia thing, and you kind of realize who your character is as you go. And this wasn't for a huge campaign; it was just like four or five sessions, but it was really fun to go through the whole process of kind of realizing what the world is. As somebody who didn't remember anything, even who you are or what you look like or what your class is or anything. And then the really fun thing was we thought we were all part of a party at the beginning. But at the end of the campaign, there's kind of this fun twist ending where a couple of us were like rivals and like total enemies. And it didn't really come out until the end. It was fun to have that twist where all of a sudden we do remember all these things and we have all these like old memories, but also we have the new memories from the campaign and kind of pulling you in two different directions to see like, oh, am I going to side with my party that I've been with for all this time or the people that I've apparently been with my entire life, you know? It was a really fun way to just find and explore a world. And it was a really natural way to like want to be asking about lore all the time, which is really fun to hear about. And sometimes players don't naturally push or ask questions, so like the DM kind of has to like sneak it in there. But this kind of a setting made it really easy.
Wow, that's awesome.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, I love that. Just super fun. Okay, now that we're all warmed up, let's ask the question that some of the listeners might be asking. What is Worldsmith and how did it begin?
I'll take this one again. So, I mean, Bryce and I have been DMs and playing D&D for forever. We love the game. It's obviously one of the biggest parts and hobbies of our lives, as I'm sure it is for you guys. And it's awesome. But as you guys have mentioned countless times on this podcast, it's also a difficult game to be playing constantly. I probably play in like 2 or 3 sessions a week right now, sometimes even 4. Wow. And when you're a DM, that's a ton of time. And when I was in high school and in college and dating and working jobs and being in school, it was just a lot to manage. It was almost like a part-time job. And then the other thing was I had a lot of fun getting really deep into the lore and creating really rich backstories and fun kind of quests and things there that could be really intriguing to the characters and the players. But it wasn't always the most fun for me to do the more balancing aspects or some of the more minutia kind of pieces of things. Even when it came to things like map making, like it just takes a long time. And I had an idea for what I wanted to see there, but I just wanted it faster and I wanted to get more focused on the things that I found really enjoyable when it came to world building. So the need just came from, hey, we want to make better sessions of higher quality a lot faster and easier. And we want to be able to focus on the creative aspect and less on the more monotonous kind of aspect of things. So we started trying to come up with a really good map solution. Kind of like Dungeon Alchemist, stuff like that. That space is great, and there's some really cool people there. So we decided to move away from that, and we focused a lot more on the things that we enjoyed more, like the lore and creating really rich backstories and characters and magic items and really impressive homebrew and things like that. And we've just built out our suite from there. So I guess that's the backstory of where it comes from. Bryce, do you want to talk a little bit more about what we actually do.
Yeah, I actually want to just let the audience know, and you guys as well. Matt's a different level DM than anyone I've ever met. I am not seasoned at all. I've only been on and off for the last year and a half. I have played D&D for 8+ years, but being a DM is completely new to me. And until we had met and started brainstorming ideas about Worldsmith, that was actually when I started to get into practicing DMing, getting into the game prep, and I just realized, wow, this is already so painful. I mean, it's fun. I got into it initially just thinking, this is going to be like a walk in the park. I'm going to have so much fun with this. And then I realized, oh my gosh, there's just backstory after backstory after lore after, prepping for these insane turnarounds from players. So I started to already get nervous. I'm like, okay, so yeah, we need to work on this. And Matt, we had talked about, the big important thing that we don't feel like is out there was make a map generator where we could procedurally generate maps. So not using AI, but being able to allow the creativity aspect of, generating a base template or something even more expansive than that, and allowing the DM to kind of customize it as they go. That was our initial plan. Obviously, we talk about this, but me and Matt kind of just laugh because it's a whole another level of coding. So we tried it out for 2 or 3 months and realized this is going to take more time than we thought. And our first thought getting into, the same space was, let's just make it text-based for now. And, our problems, you'll realize as we go on through this podcast, is that they're being solved, or at least being, minimized because of how the generators on our platform work. So we have a large tool set of generators, currently just generators.
20 or something.
For 20, yeah, for treasures, stories, monsters, NPCs, magic items, spells, anything. We want and have always had the idea to create something that will allow anyone to generate the creative, nerdy aspect of their random, lore NPC, and just build off of that and be able to edit it, customize it, change it up how they want, and make it still feel like what they're creating is part of their campaign. That is actually the idea that we had since the beginning, and that's kind of what we've been trying to go with. But it took us a while to get there. We were like, let's just build maps, let's build these cool interactive stuff for VTTs, and then it just we got shot in the foot within a couple of weeks. We're like, this isn't gonna work. we don't have the experience for it. So
on that note, actually too, I think we had explored a lot of solutions as well, and Bryce mentioned this, using trying to have things fully customizable, because obviously there's so many great pre-made modules out there, and DMs love those. I love them. They've been an awesome resource to me my entire life. But a lot of our players just take whatever you plan and then do the exact opposite, right? So it's which is amazing. It's the way the game is supposed to go. But especially when you're running a pre-made campaign, there's just not as much room for that. Because it's much harder to customize that kind of a story. So we wanted to have something where people could have that level of quality to a game, while still being able to make it completely their own, no matter what happens in the session. And the DM doesn't have to artificially guide them back to the story that he or the story module wants them to take. Just something that's totally for the players to take as their own. So I think that was a big part of it too. Beautiful. Anyway, we talked for a long time.
I'm just gonna tack on one more thing real quick. What's funny is that, when we had this map idea, we'd spent 2 or 3 months trying to build some interface and some procedurally generated map builder. But I started to get into DMing, and I was like, what the heck? This is so much more complicated. I want to create these monsters and NPCs that are just so niche to, my campaign. And so I actually just built this tool myself, like just for fun. I was like, I'm just going to try it out. Let's see if it works. And after a while, I'm like, hey, Matt, you should check it out. And then I started sending it out, and everyone's like, hey, this is actually a good idea. So we're like, okay, this is something we can actually like tangibly see is working right now. Let's just start with this, the text-based stuff. And it kind of just went from there. So.
Amazing. Okay. So for the listener, if it's okay, I'd like to kind of go through like a small exercise. Let's say listener, very new DM, maybe hasn't DM'd. They find Worldsmith. Walk us through like the timeline of like session 1 or 2 and a few use cases, maybe a handful of like DMs doing this kind of story, and then they decide to use this this aspect of Worldsmith. This is how they do that, just to give the audience a bit more of a kind of tangible understanding of how it works.
Yeah, totally. So it really depends on where or when you start using Worldsmith in your campaign process. There are a lot of people who use it in the middle of their campaign while they're there and they want something. And in those cases, it's a lot like a random like table or something you're just rolling for. Let's say your players go to a different part of the city that you weren't expecting them to go. And you want a really detailed shop that doesn't just have like some random things, but you want it to have something specific to the story as well. Or you want it to have a really fleshed out NPC as well who gives them quests while they're in the shop. A DM could just use that on the spot there.
Thanks again for listening to our show. If you like our content and would like to engage with more of it, head over to our Instagram account at HowToBeABetterDM and give us a follow. Make sure to watch some of our Dungeon Master rules videos while you're there to give yourself some more structure and procedure as a Dungeon Master. Also, don't forget to reach out with a DM and we can talk shop and I can get to know you a little bit better. Thanks again for listening. You obviously have good taste. I mean, you listen to How to Be a Better DM after all. We thank you so much for your support. And if you've ever gotten anything useful from How to Be a Better DM, take a minute and rate us and review us on your podcast listening app of choice. It goes a very long way to helping our show help many more Dungeon Masters out there who are just like you. If you love our content, help others become better Dungeon Masters too. You work 8 hours a day. You spend time with your family, and when you come home, you do work around the house. And it seems that you never have as much time as you would like to prepare for your D&D sessions. Does this sound like you? Wouldn't it be amazing to have endless material prepared for your D&D sessions anyways? That's where Roll & Play Press comes in. Roll & Play Press provides D&D 5e compatible material for any type of session. Running a one-shot? Check out their One-Shot Wonders book with over 100 one-shot ideas. Getting started with a new sci-fi campaign? Get their Game Master's Sci-Fi Toolkit to have your games much more prepared with much less effort. Why reinvent the wheel? Check out Roll & Play Press at rollandplaypress.com, see what they have to offer, and get a 10% discount when you buy something by using the code BETTERDM10, that's BETTERDM10 at checkout. Give yourself just a little bit extra help so that you can continue being the world's greatest Dungeon Master.
As opposed to that, and like just building things in the middle of the session, you could also go to Worldsmith, and before you're even playing, you could create an entire world that you want your story to be based in. You could create the entire major plot or the story for your entire campaign for like years. You could create individual scenes. You can create individual encounters. You could plan out your entire session for the day in Worldsmith beforehand. And then when you're actually there, you can just have Worldsmith open, just that one tab, and just see all of the pieces of content that you want so that you're not constantly going between your notes, between SRD content, between D&D Beyond, all those kind of things. And And then we have one beta feature as well right now, but we have, like, let's say you're even a player and you just want to prep a really good player character that has all of the correct rules, but also has flavor instead of just from a set list of ideals and flaws and stuff like that. You want to get deep and rich into the backstory. Like, we have that generator too. So all of things like that, no matter where you are in the process, you can just go on to Worldsmith and make any piece of content that you want. Whether you want to get really in depth and edit things and make them totally yours, you can do it that way. Or if you're just in the middle of a session, you need some fresh content or encounter or something like that, you can just click randomize and it'll give you something really high quality.
I see. Awesome. So it sounds like it is the spark to really help dungeon masters kind of, develop ideas, or when they're in a bind and they're kind of shot out of ideas, it helps them when they need something like that. I'm really interested. You mentioned, you can come before a session and really open it up and start world building. So in your opinion, what is the best place to start when you start world building?
Yeah. So on our website, we've actually organized it. We did a huge survey of all of our Discord members, which is a little over 1,000 at this point, to ask those DMs how they organize a campaign. And a lot of them said that they do it in the flow of they create the world, they create the broad general story, and then from there they start going into individual sessions and scenes or key points that they need to hit. They don't obviously plan out every single little nitty-gritty thing, but they plan out the big important things that are going to happen throughout that whole story. So that's kind of how we organize the whole world building portion, or the campaign generator of our website. You go on, you fill in a bunch of drop-down options, you put in your custom content, and then it'll give you a world. And this is a map of the world, general overview of the world, and like the economic, the war-torn state, how magic prevalent it is, the major deities, things like that. Just a really big overview of the world. And obviously you can add and delete entire sections, edit that as much as you want. And then after that, you'll go to the story, and similar process. You fill in the drop downs, enter in custom content or upload content, however you want. And then you can, here's the general story. Here's the name of the campaign that you're going to be going through. Here's a list of sessions that are going to come up in like 1-sentence descriptions, so that you know the big picture of how this story is going to unfold. You can have timelines, calendars, those kind of things. And then from there, you just go session by session. Typically, people will do it where they generate the next session, which is a group of scenes, unorganized, however people want to go about them. And each scene is kind of like an encounter with a map for that place, key features, who the NPCs are there, stuff like that. And then once people complete a session and they know what's happened, then they can take all that information and generate the next session, all within that world, building upon the content that they had in the last session, in the last session, the last session. So the story keeps flowing in a very organic way.
That is so awesome.
Yeah. So I'm interested, how do you, I guess, so sandbox world or sandbox game versus like a linear type game, right? Railroading versus not. How would you go about world building for one versus the other?
You want to try and tackle that, Bryce? If not, I can.
That's a tough question. That's a good question, though.
Yeah.
On our side, I mean, I think there's. This is a great question. Honestly, I am the very much sandbox DM. Like I want my homebrew world to be as open, as possible, as unique as possible too. So to have Worldsmith, you would need to go and you have a file, just a doc of all of your data, right? You can upload that to Worldsmith as you're generating new stuff. That's on anything, whether it be like monsters, NPCs, the encounters, that stuff. That's how I've actually used it in creating a campaign that I've made. I just went from, give me a story, and I fleshed that out, and then I made the world, and then I just kept attaching it to this document. And then after a while, I was like, let me just keep making NPCs and monsters off of this. And it worked very well. Like it's intense, and it's exciting to see how, the world building can go from starting off with this very open world campaign to building out just the little nitty gritty details, and then being able to go from there. I know Matt's got plenty more to talk about this, so I'll leave it more to him.
Honestly, what I have to say is very similar to what Bryce said. I am an especially sandbox kind of guy when it comes to DMing. I think when I first started DMing, like in high school, I was a very linear story kind of driven kind of guy. But I think I found myself leading my players a lot, just unconsciously, when I had very specific things that I wanted them to do. And even sometimes when they would have rolled badly and I wanted it to follow this path, I would kind of do a little bit of retconning or just like fix things for them or lie about my own roles as a DM, just so that the story could keep going. Which, I mean, again, if people are there to follow and enjoy a beautiful story that's been written by the DM, that's a great way to explore and experience the game. But honestly, I'm not a talented enough story builder to make sessions that are so perfect that people just want to do whatever I want to do. So I follow much more the sandbox way, where, there's a lot of things that can happen, and there's a lot of things that are built for like the players to do, but if they never do them, doesn't matter, And if they do want to do something that I didn't plan for, like, I'm going to try and make that happen the best I can. And I'd say Worldsmith is very much built in that way. We don't have like flows to the scenes or sessions, where it's like, oh, if this scene fails, then you go this way. Or if this scene successes, you go this way. It's just like a list of things that are there. And if you want to use any of them, that's awesome. But if not, then you don't have to use them. So, yeah, I hope that answered the question. I don't know if you...
No, it absolutely did. My next sort of follow-up question is, I have a lot of, I talk to a lot of people, a lot of dungeon masters. I whenever we get new followers on Instagram, I try to send them a message, say, hey, thanks for the follow. What's your biggest struggle as a DM? And a lot of people say that they are either a very new DM or have not started DMing, and they're waiting to be ready for the next session or their first session. So with, you both mentioned you don't necessarily kind of push a story or make it linear type, but how much world building do you need to do before you start your campaign, before you're ready to go?
I want to tackle this one. This is in my wheelhouse. I started off building out an entire campaign. This was a year and a half ago when, Matt and I came up with this idea. I spent maybe like 30, 40 hours just building out an entire campaign story, what's going to happen in each act, what's going to, what are all the NPCs, where is everything going to play out in this world? And I got so burnt out that it wasn't even like fun. Like after the first 2 sessions, it was fun, but I was just so tired.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is how D&D is going to be, like what is this? But I took a step back, and actually like 3 or 4 months ago, I started a new campaign with some friends, and I just started with the story. I went, okay, what are the main goals I want them to achieve? And from there, you have like maybe 2 or 3 acts of like, oh, this big bad's going to get killed, whatever, move on from there. And then in each part or each act, I would break it down into little segments and say, okay, could there be things in here, things I could break down of like, maybe they need to have a note before they go and like find out about this big bad's whereabouts, or maybe they encounter an NPC on the way. They have to encounter that NPC or something. That's kind of the world building that would recommend starting out with. It's just this story. If you have this story, everything else kind of just flows and makes sense. Whether it's like you think it's pretty dumb, you'll come up with great ideas. It just takes some time. So yeah, starting with just the storyline, and then when you feel comfortable, honestly, I think maybe like 8-10 hours of just building a story and then going, okay, let's just start with session 1. Let's just see how it goes. Sorry, session 0. Let's see how it goes. Like let's just get the players excited. Don't stress out too much, new DMs, about having this crazy story arc or this crazy world. I honestly still have like one region made on my map, and it's tiny, and there's 2 towns, and there's maybe like 10 NPCs, and that's it. That's after like 3 or 4 sessions, and I'm not even gonna try building too much. But I would say my experience probably isn't the same for everyone, but that's where I would start if I were to do it again. And I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. Everything he said was pretty much exactly what I would say. And I would also say to new DMs, this isn't really answering the question at all, but your session 0 is going to be a little bit awkward, almost always, like it's just how it is, because, and it's honestly not even the DM's fault most of the time. It's because the players aren't comfortable in their characters yet. They're just going to be themselves a little bit. And most of the time it takes like 2-3 sessions in order for characters to start really role playing with each other, even if they're vets, and they've been playing for forever. It takes them a minute to get really into their characters, and to know what their character would do and how they interact with other characters or players. So I would say, yeah, have a big plan, like that's really big picture, and then have enough nitty-gritty details that you feel confident running a session or 2. And if you have that, then you're going to be fine. You'll always underestimate how long it takes a character or your players to go through a combat encounter or finish being at the shop. So like, as long as you have enough details to keep them busy for a few hours, like you're going to be great.
Yeah. More ideas are just coming. Another couple things I'd say for new DMs, the first thing you also want to realize, after this session 0, is that you're the same person behind the screen as you are in front. Like you're just their friend. You're there to interact. You're not there to make things worse. You're there to have fun. I learned that, not the hard way, but I've learned that more as I started DMing, with more frequency. I was like, okay, like I don't have to pull out these crazy cool schemes or these crazy cool encounters for us to have fun. Like some of the players will just do dumb stuff, like go steal like an old man's like change, on the street. That's just what happens. We all laugh about it afterwards. But I'd say, yeah, don't overstress yourself if you're DMing. I see comments all the time about, oh my gosh, like I'm stressed, I'm worried. I spend like 3 to 5 hours between sessions. If you've got the story and you've got a good idea, I sometimes just improv more now than I do prepare. So, but
yeah, and no one's gonna be mad about that. Like, no one has ever walked away from a session been like, wow, my friend's a garbage DM, like never gonna play with him again. I'm sure it's happened a few times, but I've played thousands of hours and I've never ever felt that way. People are gonna be thrilled. You're gonna do a great job. Yeah.
Yeah, Bryce, it's funny that you kind of talk about your players do end up going off and kind of doing do random things. They do what they want at the end of the day. Like I remember maybe my second ever session with Justin, maybe third. It was one of the very first sessions, and we were in that beginning section where we're kind of getting comfortable in our characters and figuring out what this world is. And I feel like this was the first funny moment in the campaign where Justin described a guard that was like looking off in the distance, and we were in this tower, and he was standing basically like at an open window next to this like stall with a hippogriff in it. and we wanted to steal the hippogriff, I think. And so we went off, me and my friend went over there, and we ended up like Spartan kicking him just off the tower.
Oh my God.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where like here we are 3 years later, and we still joke about that guard named Charles, who probably had a family, and we just didn't care,
Oh, he did have a family. He absolutely did. Newborn twins, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
So along with that,
wife was out of the picture, dude. He was a single dad.
Yeah, maybe
those kids are orphans.
Well, and see, we know that those details came afterward just to make us feel bad, and so it's
100%.
like it's a testament to just roll with what your players give you, and it's probably going to be more fun.
You guys were walking through the town a few days later, and you like saw a lonely funeral with like no one there.
Yeah, we skipped town, otherwise we would have.
Yeah, but you never know when those kids might come back, because who knows?
It's true.
Next villain. Gotta finish the bloodline, dude.
Exactly. Next question I want to ask, and we are sort of coming down on time here, so this is going to be our last question before we transition into kind of the final closeout. But so I loved what Bryce said about starting with the story. So how do you do the opposite, right? How do you translate awesome world building into plot points?
I mean, for the most part, you might just have a character that you like, or you might like just these monsters, these minions. Like in my first world, I have 5 demons. They're all like very unique, and that's actually what I built everything off of. It wasn't the story. So maybe I was like, I don't want to spend too much time creating the storyline. I don't have time at all, school, work. Let's just create some of these cool things that I've always thought of fighting. Maybe you have like a certain plot point, like at the very beginning, like you said, and then kind of just going from there. You take it session at a time, but also keep in mind, like, okay, they're coming up to this next point where they'll get introduced to another character or one of the other demons. Like if you're building out from a certain point, I would just branch out from there. I wouldn't build out the whole storyline unless you feel like you need to. But when you're playing a session, it feels very much like start from scratch every time. Like you're expecting your players to do one thing, and the next thing you know, you end up going, okay, well, my whole session that I planned was basically for naught. Now I have to change gears and plan for the next session that's completely unrelated. That's kind of what I expect based on your question, if I'm right. Just starting from one point and going to the next one by one, and then having just a couple sessions down plan or an idea of what you have.
Yeah, or if you build the world first, like just think about our world. The world is full of conflict everywhere, So if you come up with a world, I'm sure you've come up with a few big overarching world conflicts. Maybe there's a war between 2 nations. Maybe there's a cult that's trying to take over something, or, some like really big picture things like that. And if you plan for those and that that's going on, and then the party like goes into a new town, then maybe there's like a town that's recently been ransacked in like a nation line war or like skirmish, and it's really easy to find individual plot points from there. Like this war's at war, they're close to the border, and this town just got ransacked, and there's this poor little girl who can't find her mom. I've got to go find her. It's like really easy once you have big picture ideas to come up with smaller and smaller plot points to go with that overall story. And then maybe the players get attached to certain big pictures, and then that's where the story goes in the long run. So depends on how you want to do it.
What comes to mind when you said that was essentially like a lot of moving pieces, right, that aren't moving yet. So when you world build, and this is what I understood from what you said, when you world build, you're building kind of like 3 or 4 car engines in the same space. and then you turn them on at the same time and you watch the sparks fly, right?
Yeah.
So you make the parts, then you set them in motion, and then you have conflict, and then you kind of just drop your players somewhere, right?
Yeah, totally.
Interesting.
Except don't be too like in depth with it. If you're gonna like create giant in depth card, maybe it's
dominoes, like probably.
Yeah,
more.
There's dominoes or something, or like something that's not as complex as a car engine. It's just like a few different really big ideas that could be fit into like a couple sentences.
Yeah, I love that.
And then they're running, because then you don't have to stress out too much and like building all these details. But yeah, essentially that idea. Totally.
I love it. Car engines. Well, it's been such a delight having you guys here with us. We're down to the last moments together. So before we let you go, 2 questions. First one, how can our listener reach out to you, support you, and see what you're up to?
The biggest answer to that is worldsmith.io. That is our website. Come check us out. You'll have a free trial. Even if you hate us, like, we're doing so much constantly. If you looked at our website a month ago, you wouldn't recognize it right now. And if you look at it a month from now, you probably won't recognize it still. So come check us out. And if you have ideas, please give it to us. Join our Discord. There are links on the website. There's links to all of our socials on the website. But just go to worldsmith.io and explore and see if we're right for you. Because honestly, we're just here to help DMs make better quality sessions with less effort. So that's what we want to do.
I love it. Well, because we want our listener to go out there and be the world's best dungeon master, we need to give them some homework, right? So starting with Bryce, then Matt, and then Caden, what is one final tip or action item that you would give the listener based on what we talked about today? And if you need time to think, we can do Caden, Matt, Bryce.
I can start. Honestly, I would just say try and go through the campaign creation process that we just described here. Come up with a basic idea for a world, then a story, and then a session from there. Just keep it as broad as you want or as detailed as you want, depending on how much time and effort you want to put in. But I think you'd be really surprised when you follow those 3 steps, how easy it is to get the ideas flowing. Like that initial bit is tough, like coming up with a planet or world or something. But as soon as you have a few details, all of a sudden there's like nonstop ideas that could come and flow and turn into really engaging sessions. So just try and walk through that process. Step 1, 2, 3, world, story, session.
Beautiful.
And do it on Worldsmith.
Awesome. Caden, Bryce, who wants to go next?
Yeah, I was going to say that I feel like the assignment is pretty obvious here. It's and this is an assignment for Justin and I as well, is go on Worldsmith. And I think that trying to run a campaign purely on it, obviously, like, we've been DMing a little bit longer than, maybe the listener right now, but, it would be a fun experiment just to see what happens with somebody brand new versus, somebody who's been doing it for a little bit and how it works into your workflow. And we'd love to also hear your experiences, see if this is something you enjoy. And I'm sure, these guys would too. So that's my assignment.
Awesome. Bryce.
I'm just going to say, build what you want, build something that you already love. Build what you already know and go from there. You'll definitely see it on Worldsmith. So
I love that.
Yeah, I'm stealing that tennis racket idea.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I've actually been thinking of like a spell called like Rebound, very similar, but the tennis racket idea is really fun.
If you guys want, I can send you the link to it, because we can share links. I'll give it to you guys.
Oh,
that's
sweet.
Excellent.
That's
excellent.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, listener, you've heard it here. You need to go out and build your world. And as Bryce said, build what you love, right? And then kill your darlings and do all the other writing tips that you've heard in your life. But that'll have to wait till next time, because we're out of time. We'll be back next episode with another handcrafted episode just for you. Until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative. Brought to you by Session Zero Studios. For more information, visit sessionzerostudios.com.